Hi, welcome to another edition of Moments Off the Mat. I'm Taylor Miller, the communications manager at USA Wrestling, and today I'm joined by Olympian, world silver medalist, and he's currently serving as the executive director and head coach of the California RTC, and as well as the chairperson of the DE&I committee at USA Wrestling, and that is Kerry McCoy. So thank you, Kerry, for joining us today.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks you for taking the time.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which was recently revamped thanks to USA Wrestling President Bruce Baumgartner kind of challenging the organization to revive this committee. So for you, as someone who has been in this sport for a while and has had several different roles, athlete, Olympic coach, college coach, and more, why is it important for us to have this committee and to revive it?
So I think, and we definitely have to pay tribute to the previous committee and the work that they did. I think they definitely laid a foundation for us to be able to build off of. The climate and the environment in our country has changed a little bit in the last couple of years, if you want to say that. But it's definitely a different time, and for an opportunity to start looking at things from a wider lens. And I think that's what Bruce wanted to do when he wanted to reinvigorate this committee. It's like, okay, times have changed. You have to always be introspective as an individual and as an organization. So look and say, okay, where are we missing? And I think there were, a couple of situations through this past year that the organization was not as on top of things, as they could have been. So it's like, hey, when it comes to diversity and equity and inclusion. So, Bruce said, hey, let's make sure we don't miss anything. If we miss something this year, let's make sure we don't miss it again. But there might have been stuff that we don't even know that we're missing, and let's put a strategy together. So I think that was really the big impetus for setting it up and getting it going again. The second thing that was really important is that the net to populate the committee was really, really broad. I mean, people from the sport, people outside of the sport, people from all over the country. And obviously when you're talking about diversity issues, it's important to have, people with diverse backgrounds, with diverse experiences. So it's not just, your traditional ethnic diversity or gender diversity, or, it's diversity of thought, it's diversity of experience, it's diversity in all aspects. So, so not only just putting together a bunch of people that already know each other and have worked together and, have seen all the things that they think that the organization needs to address, but really bringing in a lot of people that have different experiences to make the committee that much more aware and really dig in a meaningful way. So I think it's, I don't think I know it. It's pretty awesome the way it's come about, and the group that we've got together is pretty incredible as well.
Yeah, so you're talking a little bit about the makeup of the committee. I'm wondering if you could maybe expand a little on some of the experience and some of the backgrounds that do make up this committee.
Yeah, and I mean, we can go, and I don't want to, I don't want to butcher anybody's accomplishments by, trying to list all the things that these great people have done. But, we've got some pretty outstanding people. I mean, if just run down Jenna Burkert. Jenna was a world team member. Ironically enough, Jenna and I graduated from the same high school, so that was pretty cool for us to be together. She's competitive on the national scene. Lauren Burrows, who is married to Jordan Burrows, she has a lot of experience. I think she's been influential in a lot of diversity initiatives in the sport of wrestling and empowering women. She also, has some experience outside of the sport. I mean, obviously, when you're in the sport as deep as her family is, there's a whole lot of connection. Her brother wrestled, so she's got a whole lot of connection to the sport, but she has her own identity that, has been a big part of where she's able to bring valuable experience to the committee. Veronica Carlson, longtime national team member, ton of experience on the mat, the chair of the Athlete Advisory Council. So she really brings that athlete voice from a personal nature, but also being able to be a sounding board for the other athletes to hear their concerns and bring them forward, but also to give the information back to them. And BJ Futrell, he's got a lot of experience. He's a national team athlete. He's a couple of the other committees. He's a member of the Black Wrestling Association. Now he's a director of Beat the Streets Philly. So, he's got that exposure, and coming from Chicago, one of the great wrestling kids programs, the Twisters program that he grew up coming through. So he's got a lot of experience. Erin Golston, another national team member, multiple time world medalist. She's got a ton of experience. She's still actively competing. So she has that, the athletes that have been competitive in the last few years, but, for her to be in the hunt, just like Jenna, they have that experience where some of the things that might have been thought of, historical relevance is still going on now. So she can bring that expertise. David Gonzalez, he's a representative from Arizona. I think he's their state chair. So he's got a lot of experience with the youth group and grassroots level. Eric Guerrero, Eric was an Olympian. Eric's on the coaches council, NCAA champion, assistant coach. He runs an RTC. So he's got a ton of experience. Afsoon Johnson was one of the pioneers in women's wrestling in our sport, but worldwide, medalist, world medalist, Olympic coach. And I think her and Eric Guerrero actually went to the same high school. So it was kind of an interesting deal to see that. Heather Lawrence Benedict, and she's transitioning into a new role, but when the committee was populated, she was a sports administration professor at Ohio University. She's also a member of USA Wrestling's long range planning committee, and she does not have a ton of wrestling experience. So she's one of the, different perspective of someone that hasn't, been fully immersed in the sport of wrestling, but she has a ton of experience on the collegiate side and dealing with, diversity issues on a college campus and in the world as a whole. Jay Louie. Jay is an active duty Army sergeant, or I'm not sure if he's a sergeant. I'm sorry if I got his title, but he's in the Army, and he's done work on government issues and a lot of grassroots level, international. So he brings that experience, and again, not a wrestling, fully immersed in all of his years. He's really on the grassroots level, but brings that military mindset of planning and execution. Ndidi Massey, Ndidi is a lawyer. She's on a commission on New York State Athletic Commission. She's been engaged on the conference level, on the NCAA level, on professional level, with marketing, with media relations. So she's just got a ton of experience. And again, not a traditional member of the wrestling community, but has ties to links. Ken Kraft, that just recently passed away. She had a great relationship with Ken, and she knew wrestling from going to school at Northwestern. So she had a tie to it, but she wasn't a lifelong member of the wrestling community. So good to have her experience. Alan Merrill is a representative of our USA Wrestling Officials Association, and he's got a ton of experience, but obviously that piece on the officials and what they go through, and if there's concerns of diversity and equity issues within officiating, both on the athlete side, the coaching side, and official side, he brings that level to the committee. And then Johnny Stefanowicz. Johnny's a Greco-Roman athlete. Again, he's on the AAC. He's a world team member. Very engaging, very connected at a high level. He's in our WCAP program, so another military mindset. And it's just really great to have the experience of athletes, the experience of people outside of the athletic community, people on college campuses, people in the public sector. And that's what I said, it really makes this committee great because of the diversity that exists.
Yeah, it's a really well-rounded community. You've got varying ethnicities, genders, sexual orientation, experiences, things like that. What do you see? I mean, we've only had a few meetings so far. Well, I guess more than a few, but in the beginning of stages of this, what is the potential that you see this committee having on USA Wrestling and just the sport as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we were pretty aggressive, and, in the time to manage, everyone's busy, right? When it goes through the accomplishments and the experience that everyone has, you can tell, no one on this committee is just sitting around waiting for someone to call and ask them to do something. So people are busy. So the committee prioritized the activity we got together, and we wanted to figure out, what we want to do, and not just be a committee that just sits around and when an issue comes up, hey, let's go talk to the diversity committee and get a feedback. We wanted to actually be engaged and connected. So we had, let's see, we started in October. We had a couple of meetings in October, a couple in November, a couple in December, and we've had 2 in January. So, 6, 7, 8 meetings, and we came up with a mission statement. We came up with guiding principles, and then we came up with some initiatives that we felt like it was important to have a foundation. As I mentioned before, the previous committee did a ton of work just really addressing issues and making sure that USA Wrestling was aware of the different challenges that different groups may face. And our charge, is really, like I said, to build off that foundation and just take it to another level, not just to be aware, but to educate ourselves on the deeper level, but also to make sure that we would have a plan and we're proactive in celebrating diversity and not just, being aware of diversity, but celebrating it and making sure it's part of the fabric of USA Wrestling and, as a whole, to make sure that that's what we're focused on. So it's really important that our committee had the experience that they needed and had the foundation from the previous committee, but really, I don't want to say breaking new ground because it's, diversity and equity and inclusion has been around for a long time. So, but really taking the opportunity to bring our organization to higher levels and higher heights with the focus of making sure that we do not miss anything. And the catchphrase that I always like to say when it comes to diversity is we want to eliminate blind spots. And so a lot of times people don't even recognize when they do something or say something that may not be appropriate or may not be, the right thing to say. So, we want to eliminate those opportunities and, build awareness, build education, and really focus on helping our organization to be, the best NGB athletically, but also making sure that we have great opportunities for people to reach their full potential, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, no matter, who they are.
Yeah, you spoke about kind of having to lay some groundwork, even though you did have a foundation from the committee before. Can you expand on some of the initiatives and some of the work that's already been done before we can kind of, like you said, we have to identify the blind spots. So what are some initiatives and ways that you guys are doing that?
Yeah, that's that, we, and again, when you put together such a big, strong group of really great leaders and people that have a ton of experience, we almost want to, conquer the world. And, so we had to narrow it down, and we went through a pseudo strategic planning process. We, identified strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for USA Wrestling, and, how we could best, really just do what we wanted to do, which was to make sure that we are, as an organization, our mission, we want to lead and support our members in achieving excellence, at all levels of US Wrestling. We want to embrace unique perspectives. We want to create awareness, appreciation, acceptance for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, I'm paraphrasing our mission statement, but basically we want to make sure. So instead of just trying to take everything out there and be everything to everybody, we wanted to kind of focus in on a few areas to make sure that we had the time and energy to address it in a meaningful way. So we came up with 4 initiatives, in no particular order, just the way they work out with. A big thing that came out was research, right? So in our research initiative, we want to conduct research to identify the needs and opportunities for the organization to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we need measures of success. So it's research to identify the needs and opportunities, but then also make sure we have measures, because you can say, hey, we can identify all the opportunities, but if we don't measure our success, we won't know where we're going. And then that was kind of broken into 2 sections: internal for the organization itself. So in the general office, what's going on in Colorado Springs, but then also external with our members, everyone that has a USA Wrestling card, our sponsors, our partners, really just to get the information that we need to see where the organization sits when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. And that's a big task because there's a lot of information out there, but we want to make sure that we're going to, gather as much so we know where we're going from. Because it's easy to sit back and say, hey, we think X, Y, and Z, but there's no data to support it, or there hasn't been anyone really looking into it. So research is a big factor. Our second one was education, which goes hand in hand with our research, right? So, once we figure out, and I mean, while we're figuring out, exactly where we stand as an organization, there are certain things that we know that we want to make sure that we, again, going back, we don't want to have these blind spots. We want to make sure that we're proactive. So we want to, increase education awareness, not just for, this committee or for the board, but everyone tied to USA Wrestling, all of our members, all of our stakeholders, all of our constituents, to make sure that they're aware of the diversity initiatives, that they're aware of the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and the challenges and the opportunities that exist. So, if there's an opportunity to celebrate, a certain group, that it's not just, Bruce Baumgartner, Rich Bender, and, a handful of people, but it's the entire wrestling community that has that opportunity and is aware of it. So really focus on educating. And one of the things that we have identified in that initiative was to have an annual calendar, of diversity opportunities, the celebration opportunities. So, it's not something that, oh, February is coming up, it's Black History Month, and on the January 29th, like, oh, what are we going to do for Black History Month? But you have it built into the fabric of the organization, that we know that, these are opportunities to celebrate diversity, women, gender, ethnicity, whatever the opportunities are, that it's built into the fabric of the organization, that we know, and you don't get caught, coming up and saying, oh, wait, we don't have anything. And then something gets put up and it's not really thought out well. So, really focusing on that. And also with the awareness, the education piece is, really developing a robust, training for the organization and the membership as a whole. So people know, what is out there and what resources are available, and that we're taking responsibility for it. So education, there's a lot of things in the education, and we really want to make sure that we have buy-in at all levels of the organization to embrace diversity. So that's our education initiative. Partnerships initiative, I mean, again, very important. It's just to establish new and strengthen our current partnerships, and making sure that our current partners are do embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, and any new partners that we align with have that as a priority, embracing diversity, equity, inclusion. So that one seems to be, a lot more, I guess, like a no-brainer type deal. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to make sure your partnerships are good, but we want to ensure that the current partnerships, but then also reach out to some organizations that we may not have, organization or individuals that we may not have had a connection with in the past. So that's our partnerships initiative. And then the last one, or I don't say last, but other initiative is just a commitment to making diversity, equity, inclusion, a permanent thing, for lack of a better term, with USA Wrestling. Whether it's making our diversity committee a longstanding committee, whether it's hiring a diversity officer at USA Wrestling, whether it's policies and procedures, but really exploring what the feasibility of making D&I permanent, and what does that look like, and how do you accomplish that? So that one is, it's all encompassing, all the things that we do with the other three initiatives will kind of lead to that. But ultimately, that's, I mean, if you have to weight it, that's probably the most important issue, that, why this whole committee was reestablished, was to make sure that, diversity, equity, inclusion is part of the fabric of the organization. And, what does it look like in the long term? Well, that's what this initiative will be working on.
I want to go a little bit into your role within the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. You were handpicked as the chairperson before we populated the committee, but you also have a role within the Black Wrestling Association. So I'd love to hear you kind of explain your duties in both roles, and why, for you personally, it's important to be involved with both of those committees, groups.
Yeah, and I was very, very humbled when Bruce asked me to lead this committee. I've been engaged, obviously, with USA Wrestling for, majority of my life, at 12 years old when I started wrestling, and folk style season's over right to the summer of wrestling freestyle and Greco. So 1987, and I don't have to do the math, but it's been a long time, so with the sport and the different opportunities and different challenges that existed throughout my personal career, and people that I've been connected to have contributed to the person that I am. So, through the years of being able to be an athlete and an athlete advisory council member and represent the USOPC or USA Wrestling at the USOPC, being on an executive board, being on the board of directors, I just had a lot of opportunity to engage and connect with a lot of people. And, one of the biggest things that I always was pushing was making sure that the athletes had a voice, but also making sure that when you make a decision, when you make a policy, that you're not just thinking about the norm, not thinking about yourself, not thinking about what makes sense for you. And, that's been my philosophy for the majority of my life, is just having that servant mentality of how can I help make things better and what can I do to improve a situation. And so these opportunities to encourage and to champion diversity and inclusion and equity just kind of go right along with that servant mindset. So to be able to be the leader of this committee and be a part of the BWA is just it's just awesome, because I get to interact with people that are very smart, very motivated, and very passionate. And it's different in some ways, but similar in a lot of ways to just being on a team, college team, high school team, Olympic team. And you got some very motivated people that want to be the best and want to make a difference. And that's what I feel like these organizations, these committees that I'm on allow me to do. So it was, Bruce and I go way back. So it was nice that, he thought of me in a way of not just being a workout partner or being an athlete, but someone that can definitely lead and be a part of something special for the organization. So it's truly an honor to serve as the chair of this committee. And then with the BWA, and it goes hand in hand, with the opportunity to inspire and connect and empower, Black wrestlers, and then having, the additional platform of being on the USA Wrestling Diversity and Equity Inclusion Committee, that helps to create more opportunities and really see from other perspectives, other ways that we can build and grow and really move the sport in a positive direction.
So your senior career spanned from the late 90s to the early 2000s. And as you mentioned earlier, you were involved even earlier before that with wrestling. So as an athlete, or I guess,
just say it.
I know I was struggling to get my words out. How has the sport changed in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion in your eyes since your days as an athlete?
So how's the sport? Well, I guess I'll answer in two ways. So as an organization for USA Wrestling, I feel like USA Wrestling has definitely recognized, is more aware, and has embraced the fact that there are differences, there are areas to improve. And, I think over time through the years, there's always that knowledge of, hey, yeah, there's an opportunity to prove that this can get better. But, I think in the recent years, with the growth of women's wrestling and the success of some of our more diverse populations throughout the sport, Black wrestlers and different LGBT athletes. And, I think it just became one of those situations that USA Wrestling was like, hey, yeah, we're pretty good and we're really good at what we do and what we've been doing, but we can be better. And so I see that as an opportunity for the organization to not just be the status quo and just try to only win medals and try to win championships and things like that, but really to celebrate. I mean, our mission, USA Wrestling, is to help our athletes achieve their full human potential. So I think that's really a change in our organization, that in the last few years, it's like, okay, let's really stick to our mission, not just have it be boilerplate. So that in our sport, I think it's definitely gotten better, as far as, ethnic and racial, diversity, but it's still a ways to go. When it goes into gender, when it goes into, how our female athletes are treated, and, the opportunities that they have, LGBTQ community. So there's still some opportunities to grow. But I think the biggest change that I've seen through my career especially transitioning out and then being on the other side of the bench, as a coach and administrator, that there are a lot more people willing to talk about it. Now, I will say that some people may not be saying the right things, and that's a relative term, but people are definitely talking about it. So, I think that, 20, 30 years ago, the issues that were important may not have been brought out on a regular basis, but now I think you can have a conversation in the locker room, you can have a conversation in the boardroom, you can have a conversation on the bus that, will go to some of these topics that people, may have shied away from in the past. And still, not everyone knows every answer, religious beliefs, different things like that, gender differences, ethnic differences. So there's a lot of different conversations that can be had. But I think now one of the things that I personally see is that people are more willing to talk about it and, bring it up. And I still believe there's that angst of, saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, or, it's just like, oh, well, I don't want to offend anybody, but I really have a question. So should I say something or should I just let it go? And, so I think that's always going to exist. But I feel like, the relationships that we built in the sport gives us a little bit of a cushion to kind of be wrong and say the wrong things and not, get punched in the mouth when you say the wrong thing, but have an opportunity for somebody to explain, say, now, Kerry, you shouldn't have said that. And this is why, versus, just having someone cold clock you and then walk away. So I think that's one of the things that I would say in our sport is that the willingness to talk about it and recognize it, I think is gotten a lot higher, but we still got a ways to go for sure.
Right. And I've talked with several people who, former athletes who said, maybe they didn't feel like their voices were heard, Black, white, male, female, gay, straight. So seeing the athlete involvement within this committee, does that excite you to know that now that they're given a platform to speak their mind, have a voice?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's one thing, again, for me personally, I mean, I was a very active athlete in the governance structure, so to speak, but you always, and one of the opportunities I'll say is through the years is how does this affect the athletes? We'd be on the board or we'd be on executive committee or we'd be in, different, how does this affect the athletes, or have we got the input? Because for a long time, I was the voice of the athlete. So I was able to say, okay, well, how is the athlete, how's it affect that? But actually being in that role to speak up. And then when I transitioned out, it was, okay, let's make sure that doesn't get lost. And now to have, Johnny and Veronica, as leads, with the AAC, but also the other athletes that we have on this committee, it's awesome because one, they recognize the influence and the opportunity they have to make a difference, but two, they're engaged and they truly care about not just focusing on what their careers are needed, but really making the world better for the next generation or for, other people out there. So that's exciting because so many times you hear athletes portrayed as self-centered and, really focus on themselves, which you have to be successful at a high level, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? You can, at this point in time, you can focus solely on yourself, and other times you can look at others. So to have the athletes, and even the athletes that aren't on the committee, we talk about the BWA, some of our world's greatest athletes, world's greatest wrestlers aren't in the BWA, and the other organizations that are out there, Wrestle Like a Girl and Athlete Ally. I mean, there's some great athletes that are getting outside of their normal, and I don't even know if you would call it comfort zone anymore, but just of their normal routines to try to make a difference. And so this committee is awesome that we have more of those athletes and really getting out of their normal routines and make a difference.
And I think I'll wrap up my questioning today with, if you're imagining this committee or this organization just 10 years down the road, what do you hope that the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee can achieve?
Yeah. So, it's one of these things that we're, in 10 years, I hope there's no need for a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, right? So that's the ultimate goal, is that, the issues and concerns that our society and our sport face and our organization face, that they'll never, I mean, you'd be optimistic, yes, they go away, but, there's always a challenge, right? There's always things that we have to address. But the idea that there will be a structure in place for our sport to manage and deal with, issues affecting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it doesn't have to be a separate committee or a special committee or a task force or something like that. It's just that's going to be in the thread of the organization, the thread of our sport. So, and not to say that everybody is going to just be, everybody's going to love each other and never have conflict and that. I mean, that's not realistic. But the idea of, hey, you and I are different for a variety of different ways. That doesn't mean you're better, I'm better, you're worse, I'm worse. It doesn't, but we're different. Recognize those differences, celebrate those differences, and see how we can make this organization, this sport, and this world better without using those differences as a negative thing. So that's really what I hope that this committee achieves in the in the long term. And again, what's that long term? 5 years, 10 years, 2 years? It could be that. But I know the individuals on this committee right now currently have a huge commitment and a huge heart for making a difference. And I'm just really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think the other thing too, and we talked about it, the organization, but, Bruce Baumgartner reinvigorated this committee. Rich Bender's been on, majority of our calls, so he's committed to it. And, the staff, you and Laura Peters and Haley Shear and Clarissa Chun, so having the organization universally committed, but not just saying, hey, you guys go figure this out, but actually actively participating. And we have our executive director and our president that have been on calls. We have staff members that are engaging, the day-to-day, week-to-week. So I think that's a true testament to you as staff to make the commitment, but as an organization to allow, if not, in make force, I don't think it was forced at all, but really just to allow that opportunity for the staff to be engaged on a deeper level with things that are so important. So, I truly appreciate the time and energy because, as a chair of this, there's a lot of things that, I can't necessarily do without support from you and from Haley and from Laura and Clarissa. So, and then I know the initiatives also, each one of you is, we didn't talk about it, but each one of the staff members are tied to an initiative as a, staff liaison. So, if there's something going on, the committee doesn't have to go to the chair, and then the chair has to go to the president has to go to the executive director. It's, members of the committee can go directly to a staff liaison and get feedback. So it's just, I think it's a pretty good system that we've been blessed to be a part of. So I'm very thankful to the organization. I'm thankful to you and the other staff members that really make it easier to accomplish what we're setting out to do.
Kerry, I appreciate all that you've helped do for our organization and love getting to work with you. But again, I thank you so much for just your time that you took tonight just to kind of explain the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and in what's been happening. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. And looking forward to some big things coming out of this committee. So stay tuned, keep your eyes open, and we're excited for what's to come.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, Taylor.